Hey folks, me again, and I'm here to talk to you about my experience seeing Undeath, Frozen Soul, Bodysnatcher, Chelsea Grin, and Dying Fetus last Thursday. So, where do I even fucking begin with this show? I've seen so many shows in the last little while. As you probably saw on my channel, there's a recent video from me talking about seeing Gatecreeper back at the beginning of May. Then I went and saw Dying Fetus last Thursday. Then on Saturday night, I saw Protest the Hero with a bunch of other bands. And then on Monday night, I saw Primitive Man with a bunch of other bands. So I'm going to be making two videos as well about Protest the Hero and about Primitive Man. But first we got to talk about Dying Fetus because that was the longest ago show that I haven't made a video about. So, first band that played was Undeath, and this was at Theatre Corona here in Montreal. And they were fucking awesome. They were exactly what I fucking wanted. They played a shit ton of tracks from their new record, It's Time to Rise from the Grave, which is probably going to end up on my year-end best of records list for 2022 over on my blog at wherestridesthebehemoth.wordpress.com. They played a shit ton of tracks from that record. They played like one or two from the first one, but mostly it was new songs. And man, they fucking ripped. Like, they were just so extreme and intense, and it was just so fucking heavy. And their vocalist, Alexander Jones, he was super into it. He was just getting the crowd fucking riled up. There weren't a whole lot of people there, which I think was to be expected for a Thursday night that early in the evening. Of course, most people were probably going to show up for Dying Fetus, but Undeath is getting a lot of traction in the metal world right now, so it kind of surprised me that there weren't more people there to see them, especially because I think it was their first time in Canada, though I'm not 100% certain on that. After Undeath was Frozen Soul, who were probably my favorite band of the night. I am a huge fucking fan of that band. They are just so, like, fucking crushingly heavy. Their riffs are fat. They're just fucking massive sound. Just absolutely cavernous. Their drums just have, like, you know, that perfect amount of reverb. The vocals are just like drowned in fucking echo. And their riffs are just slow and fucking, they punch you in the face like a cinder block. And seeing that performed live was just like, you know, you felt it in your fucking your chest and your soul. I tried to say chest and soul at the same time. Your chol. You feel it in your chol, you know? So there was a point where, you know, leading up to this show on Twitter, I'd seen a bunch of memes on there about this band and people doing push-ups in their mosh pit, and I thought that that was a spontaneous thing that was started by some jokers at like one show. But it turns out that the vocalist of Frozen Soul, Chad Green, I think his name is, actually like enforces people to do it in a way. Like he's just like, drop and give me fucking 20 right now, of course in his like very just deep guttural voice, and it was just a sight to behold. I wasn't expecting to actually see that in person, but man, seeing that was fucking unreal. There did come a point about halfway through their set where they stopped so that Chad could address the crowd and talk about mental health issues, primarily inspired by the recent passing of Trevor, which I'm going to probably mention in another video. I think I might have already mentioned it at this point in some other video. If I haven't, I'll probably get mentioned again. But yeah, Trevor Sternad, the vocalist of the Black Dahlia Murder, recently passed away. Implied that suicide based on the post that the band made on their Facebook page, as well as their Instagram. And it's a death that's really greatly affected the wider metal community, right? It was in the After the Burial video, yeah, that I talked about it, because the guy from After the Burial also addressed this. And so yeah, Chad was just saying how, you know, we need to really, as like, collectively, as a species, as a society, especially a global society, to learn to talk about mental health issues and to reach out, you know, if you are suffering from something like that, which is something that, you know, whenever a band talks about that kind of thing, especially in a scene that's full of, like, you know, the expectation that if you're a man, you're supposed to act macho, a scene that's very full of machismo, especially in, like, death metal, which is the most stereotypically machismo scene of, like, probably the entire metal like strata. So yeah, it's important that he said that, and he also shouted out Riley Gale from Power Trip, who died of what I believe was a drug overdose. But I mean, a drug overdose could very easily be suicide. You know, it's really kind of hard to know that kind of thing after the fact. So the fact that he, you know, brought that to attention and talked about it for quite a while. Actually, he talked about it for like a solid 5 minutes. Which I know doesn't sound like a long time, but in the context of a band's live set, that's quite a while. I thought it was really good. I thought it was important, and it made me tear up a bit, honestly, just thinking about Trevor and Riley, people who, you know, I don't even know them personally, but whose art had had such a profound effect on my life, and also thinking about the amount of people in my life who've also struggled through mental illness. So it was a very touching thing that he said. After Frozen Soul came Bodysnatcher, who I was not familiar with at all going into this. Like, I didn't even listen to them beforehand, never even heard of them, to be honest. And they were just kind of like an average like deathcore band that maybe leans more into like the hardcore side of things. Like, I'd almost say that they're like the deathcore version of Knocked Loose or Harm's Way or something like that, because they have that kind of like punch you in the face, very heavy, slow, chuggy riffs. With the occasional, like, you know, skronky guitar shit. So I wasn't that into them, but like for what they were fine. Now Chelsea Grin, on the other hand, who was the band that went next, they are a band who I was actually very interested in seeing, because I do have a soft spot in my heart for deathcore. You know, I like a fair amount of deathcore, and Chelsea Grin are one of those bands that I used to listen to a lot when I was a teenager, when I was going through a pretty hefty deathcore phase. And even though I'm not super familiar with a lot of their material, they did play Sonnet of the Wretched, which is like the one track that I wanted them to play more than anything else, and they fucking killed it. Now, their vocalist, I guess he couldn't get across the border or something like that because he wasn't there. I don't really know why they didn't address why he wasn't there. They just said that he wasn't there, that he couldn't make it. So the vocalist of Bodysnatcher, whose name I don't know, had to fill in for him. And unfortunately, right when they were about to go into a song that is one of like their most well-known tracks, like it's like the big hit that they have, their guitar basically stopped working. Their guitarist switched guitars, and then his new one just like didn't work for whatever fucking reason. And it was a huge bummer, because you could tell that the vocalist from Bodysnatcher, who was so happy to be up there on stage, like he went on this big spiel about how, you know, when he was a teenager and he was like at a really shitty point in his life, Chelsea Grin was one of the bands he'd listened to that helped him get through like the shit in his life, and this was like the one song that was super fucking important to him, and he was so stoked to play it, and they played it, and the guitar just like wasn't there. It was basically just all bass for the next 2 or 3 tracks, but eventually the guitar worked again. They came back out for the last song and finished it like as a whole band. But there came a point where, you know, they were telling the vocalist to just kind of vamp for time, and he was really struggling to come up with stuff to say. But I mean, you know, when you're in a touring band and you're dependent on that much like electronics for your set to go well, there's guaranteed some gear is gonna fucking give out. You know, that's just the nature of being a live performer. Some gear is like, you know, maybe more on its last legs than you realize, or there might be just like a wire plugged into the wrong place or not plugged in the right way. And I mean, that's why bigger bands have roadies, but even then sometimes stuff just happens and you can't avoid it, and it's just par for the course, really. So after Chelsea Grin, it was the main event, Dying Fetus, and honestly, I'm not super familiar with a lot of Dying Fetus's music. I know they're like a very big name in death metal. They're kind of like a cross between death grind and technical death metal. They have a lot of elements of both, especially like the gory lyrics and shit, but their playing is just on another fucking level, man. These musicians are just unreal. The amount of technicality in the shit that they play is beyond me. It's just fucking wild. And I really, really enjoyed their set, even though I wasn't really familiar with anything that they were playing. There came a point where their vocalist and guitarist, John Gallagher, I think his name is, was saying how, you know, he was outside before the venue, before the show started. He was outside the venue just like eating a poutine and watching the Human Centipede, which probably isn't true. He's probably just making a joke, but, you know. And he said how it was his one dream to see a human centipede circle pit, and how he wanted the crowd to make his dream come true tonight. And in my mind, I was like, okay, what he wants is to see everybody get down on all fours, like their knees and their arms, and crawl in a circle on the floor. That's what I thought he meant. And I think that's what he was trying to say. But I think the crowd was confused, partially because maybe there was just like people there who didn't quite understand it. Maybe there were a lot of francophones there who aren't like 100% bilingual, so maybe there was like a crossing of like misinformation going on between the two. But basically what ended up happening was a conga line circle pit, except minus the like hey part at the end, you know, when you do a conga line, da 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 hey, da 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 hey. So just minus the hey part where people like kick out their legs at the end. It was just like a fucking conga line circle pit where everyone was like, you know, putting their hands on the shoulders of the person in front of them, and they were going in a fucking circular motion. It was really funny, and I fucking laughed out loud at that quite a bit. I should also mention they walked out to The Boys Are Back in Town by ZZ Top, which solid fucking move, and they walked off stage to Celebration by Kool and the Gang. And after the show was done and that song was playing over the PA, the drummer got down off stage and he jumped into the audience, and there was like just like a big dance party going on, and that was super fucking fun. I ended up buying some merch, which I don't have with me at the moment, but I bought Chelsea Grin and a Frozen Soul patch. So I need to start a death metal jacket soon. I recently started a punk rock jacket. It's specifically hardcore punk, punk rock, maybe a bit of grindcore in there too. All patches related to those three genres are going on that jacket, and I do want to start a death metal jacket soon. It's probably going to be like a really light blue denim one if I can find one that hopefully has a bit of tough material. But yeah, that was my experience seeing Dying Fetus at Corona Theater on June 2nd, 2022. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like down below. I'm going to be recounting some of my other live experiences that I've seen since then, including Protest the Hero at Theater Fairmount on June 4th, and Primitive Man at Barla Ritz on June 6th. Yes, it was June 6th, 2022. But until then, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.